Hi guys, it's John back here with another model inbox review. Now then, I wonder how many people here can guess what tank that is. Well, if you guessed it was French, you're doing well. The model inbox review I'm doing today is for Revell's 1/72 scale GIAT T5 Leclerc tank, which is France's indigenous designed MBT. It's also the most expensive tank in the world at €9.5 million. It is more expensive per unit than any other tank anywhere in the world. So first of all, we'll go into the inbox history. There's not an awful lot. I'm not expecting this video to take too long. First of all, Revell released this kit as a Leclerc T5 in 2002, and this was the first release box. The serial number of the kit, 03131, hasn't changed even in its latest releasings, but we'll go through something else that did crop up 3 years after this kit's released. This tank is quite big. It's not very heavy. It's only about 55 to 60 tons total weight. So it's quite a mobile tank, but it is quite big. It's certainly easily as big as a Challenger 2. And looking at the moulds in the box, I'd say it's pretty similar in size to the actual Leopard 2 tank from Germany. So that's the 2002 release kit. There's a company called Ace Corporation. Let me try and make this picture a little bit bigger for you there. Is that a bit better? Now, Ace Corporation, I'm not sure whether Ace Corporation is just a company that's licensed built the molds or whether they rebox the molds. But the thing that's interesting is that I think that Revell have got a company called Ace Corporation because the actual serial number on this kit is exactly the same as the Revell release, but it hasn't got a 0 in front of it. It's 3331, and the original release kit was 3131. So sorry, it's not the same, but I'm pretty sure that this kit is just a reboxing of the Revell model. It would certainly substantiate that claim in the fact that I've seen the sprues for both this and the Revell kit. They're identical in every respect. But Ace Corporation did a complete reboxing of the same kit that Revell released in 2002, but this was released in 2003. The other thing is that Ace Corporation also released, certainly around about 2010, 2011, 2 more options. There was the KFOR version of the T5 tank, which is the same as the KFOR version that you get in the original release T5 Leclerc from Revell. And then you also had this one, which is the United Arab Emirates version of the tank. And this was released around about the same time, probably 2011. And this is exactly the same sprue as the Revell kit. It just has different decals and it's released under the Ace Corporation label. Revell did re-release this kit in 2014, and this is the subject boxing of the kit that I'm doing a review of now. They changed the image of the picture, which was quite interesting because in the original picture the tank was actually driving down a road facing the opposite direction. But in this case it's driving across country with the turret turned nearly 90 degrees. It is exactly the same kit that you got in the 2002 release. And when we go through the moulds I'll explain there's something about this kit that I think you should be aware of, but there's nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong, the kit is really accurate, but there's nothing wrong with the parts, but there is something you should be aware of. I'm going to leave you now with 2 views of T5 Leclerc. So one on the right hand side is actually the subject model of the kit, but in real form, and the one on the left hand side is actually a special variant of the T5 Leclerc tank. And I believe it's got some sort of robot arm on the side there. I'm not sure what it's for, but it is like a specialised vehicle version of the T5 Leclerc. Now then, Options. Before we go into the inbox review, I just want to quickly go through the options. There aren't that many, but they're interesting. The first option that we're looking at is the Mars kit. Now, I've seen the moulds for the Mars kit, and they're putrid. I'm going to be honest with you. They're very reminiscent of the old 1960s and 70s poly tanks and vehicles that Airfix released, already made up in a box. And the mouldings are pretty similar to that. They are terrible, terrible. I would say if you have one of these in your stash, just sell it because it's a waste of money. The Mars kit is not very good, but I do believe that it's of the UAE variant. It just looks reminiscent of the UAE colours. But yeah, the mould is terrible. So that's 72nd scale under the Mars label. And in 1/48th, Academy model, hobby models, sorry, did a Leclerc T5 tank. And the interesting thing about this particular kit is it's motorised. In 1/48 scale, it's one of the motorised ranges that Academy accommodate in their range of various different military vehicles that are motorised. A lot of them obviously aren't motorised, but they do tanks in 48th as well as 35th scale. And the Leclerc features in their 48 scale range, so that's an interesting option. Hella was probably the first company to release a T5 Leclerc. This is a 1/35th scale, I believe it's I think it's a T4, but it could be a T5. The original Leclerc was released in T1 and then was very quickly replaced by the T2 variant. The T3 was a sort of an experimental hash, and the T4 and T5s came out very quickly towards the late 2000s. And the model they're actually working on now is the T6, and Hella do a version of that as well. You can still build the T5 from this kit, but the T6 has separate parts and decals for the T6 as well. And this kit is really, really nice. In 35th scale, the options that are available in 35th scale are they're all pretty good. And I was impressed. I've seen quite a few photographic images of some of the moulds, and the Hella kit is certainly not a bad kit. It's quite a nice kit. Hella, obviously, one option. There's another option here from Tamiya. Tamiya are probably the king of the hill, if you like. Certainly for military 35th scale vehicles and tanks, this particular kit is no exception whatsoever. This kit is very, very good, and it has been credited as being very good by a lot of the professional reviewers, IPMS modelers. They really like the Tamiya offering. So that's the T5 Leclerc from Tamiya in 1/35th, and you can also get it from Trumpeter. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but this could be a reboxing of the Tamiya kit. I'm not 100% sure. There is no evidence to suggest it is, but I have seen some of the sprues between the Tamiya and the Trumpeter kits. And although they're not exactly the same, the parts look pretty damn exactly the same. They're just positioned in different parts of the sprue. But I don't think Trumpeter have ever really been a company that's been held under suspicion of copying other companies' moulds, unlike Academy that was featured earlier in 48th. So that's a Trumpeter scale, 1/35th scale offering from Trumpeter. We'll just leave you with an image now of a T5 parked up. I'm not sure where that is, but it looks somewhere nice, doesn't it? And I want to pan the camera down now to the table so that I can show you the kit that we're in-box reviewing, and here it is. Typical size box from Revell. Most of their modern MBT armour is in boxes of this size. So that's the box. As we said before, the kit is featured pictorial form in a field with the tank turret facing nearly 90 degrees. And we'll just take the parts out, and I'll leave you with that image there. We'll have a look at the instructions, and then I just want to get these decals out ready so that I can show you them in a minute as well. You get a little gumph return slip there, like you get in all Revell kits. And I'll just pull these parts out because there are quite a few of them. going to go through this as quickly as possible. I'll just put this over here, get it out of the way. Now then, when you get the instructions in the box, they're actually folded up neatly into an A5 size, but it opens up into an A4 size, and you've got the Revell logo in the top left-hand side, Leclerc T5, and a picture there of the made-up kit, which is very, very common in Revell kits. You usually get on the top of the instruction leaflet a photograph of what you can expect to build. On the front you've got in German and English a little bit of history and stats for the actual Leclerc T5 tank, and then we'll open the instructions up, and in typical Revell form you have 27 steps to build this kit. If I remember right, I did an in-box review on the T90A Russian MBT, and I think there were 64 steps in that kit. But the T5, when I go through the sprues with you, I'll explain a little bit why that is, but the T5 doesn't seem to have the surface detail and the overall appearance of quality that the T90A has. You've got colour call-outs here, which I don't really understand why Revell do this, because there are a couple of colour call-outs there where you've got 70% of one colour and 30% of another, and another colour here, J, which is 70% and 30% of another colour. But it gives you a broad idea of what colours to paint the various parts during construction in final assembly, so that you get an idea of what colours you would want to use. Obviously, a lot of people use different colour companies for Vallejo's, Tamiya acrylics, Humbrol, FX acrylic paints. There are lots of colour companies out there that produce paints. The Revell instruction leaflet gives you a nice plan there of the 4 sprues that you get in the kit, and they are very clearly ID'd with the part number, which is, I'm always a fan of this, because I always think it's nice to get the colour, the numbers ID'd correctly, rather than searching for the numbers on the sprue, which isn't always very visible. Now then, there aren't very many parts in each of the sections that you build this kit and follow to. Usually you're probably talking about maybe 4 or 5 parts on the early stages in each of the sections, and this is clearly evident here. You have the idler sprockets, drive sprockets, and the main wheels here in sections 1, 2 and 3, and the left and right hand side chassis with the return wheels that go, and that makes up section 4 and 5. It's a good idea. I've never mentioned this actually in an inbox view, but I always find it's a good idea to paint, to build the main body shell and chassis of the tank prior to putting the top of the body onto the tank. Just build that up and then paint the main chassis of the tank prior to putting the wheels on. And before you put the wheels together, paint the wheels and the road tyres on the wheels before you put those parts onto the tank. It makes it an awful lot easier to paint those parts during construction rather than after. I'm a fan of the way the tracks go on this kit, but in section 6 and 7 you're putting all the road wheels on, as you can see there, and in section 8 you've got the method of construction for building the tracks. And with a lot of Revell kits, especially their modern armour kits, you build the tracks with individual links that go around the idler and the return wheels that go around the idler and the basic return wheels at the front of the tank. And then you've got long stretches of track that go across the top and bottom of the road wheels and the returner wheels, and you build the tracks up in individual links. And I actually like this because it means that you can make the track look really realistic by fitting all the links into the individual teeth of the drive sprockets, and it looks fantastic. I didn't like the method of track construction on the T90A. I found it a nightmare, but I much prefer this idea. It's a lot better. Section 9 and 10 and 11 is basically fitting the track assemblies and the rear of the tank and the body shell together, which goes together in section 11 there. You can see that it's only 3 parts in most of those sections. And in section 12 you fit the forward section of the tanks to the body shell and then fit everything to the chassis. Now then, section 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 is all attaching small parts to the rear end of the tank, which is great, isn't it? Yeah. The thing about the Leclerc tank that a lot of other tank kits don't have is that the Leclerc has an enormous exhaust pipe which is featured there in section 13, and it's only on one side of the tank, but it is huge and it faces upwards, and I can imagine a lot of modelers having great fun weathering that, and because it is clearly visible out the back of the tank even when the kit's finished. The other thing that's interesting is in section 16, section 15 and 16 rather. 15 is to build the external fuel tanks, and then 16 you fit them with their loading brackets to the back of the tank. Now, in virtually every single photograph I've ever seen of a Leclerc T5 tank in service with the French Army, these tanks aren't fitted to the tank, but the mounting brackets are, so there is obviously a need for them, and probably would be a need for them to be fitted to the tank in combat, but in general use I would say that they probably don't bother fitting them. It's certainly the case with some of the photographs I've seen. I've never seen them fitted to a tank on a photo yet. Section 18, you've got the forward sections, and some 19 again, you've got the forward little bits and bobs that pop on the front of the tank there. You've got the lights, and I always think the towing hooks are obviously not. There's some sort of hook that do some sort of job, not really up enough on military tanks to know what that is. Section 20 and 21, you're building the main body of the turret, and in section 22 you're building the side panniers, and this is something I always find interesting with the Revell kits and modern armour tanks, is that if you make a right pig's ear of building the track and the chassis assembly up, these panniers hide an awful lot of mistakes. So they're your friend, believe me, they really are. Section 23, you're putting the top features onto the top of the tank. Little bit of instrumentation there that goes into the front, and the driver's. It's not the driver's hatch. I think that's just the commander's hatch. And then in section 24, you've got all the back panniers. And all the storage bins at the back, and there's also an antenna, part 49 there. Section 25, you're fitting all the other doors into the correct place, and then fitting a little bit of covers there for some of the instrumentation on the front of the turret. And then section 26 and 27, you're fitting and final assembling of the turret and the machine gun with the main barrel and piece of the gun there. Now, I do have to say that the one thing that a lot of the professional builders that have put reviews up on this kit on YouTube and on the internet, they have slated the fact that the turret on this kit is in two halves, and because there's no muzzle brake at the back, there's no separate part for the muzzle, it makes finishing off the turret, getting the finish on the barrel an awful lot more preparatory work. And I would probably have to agree with them there. I don't really understand why they did that. They should have made this barrel in one complete part, and then you could have just drilled out the end like normal. And also part 62, which is it's a little machine gun that fits into the mantlet there. In a lot of photos I've seen, that machine gun isn't actually a machine gun. It's actually a smoke canister, or maybe some sort of projectile thrower, because it's just a clear pipe. It's quite a big one as well. It's quite large, that pipe that comes out. But some of the tanks that are featured on some of the photographs definitely have a machine gun in that port. So, you know, you can probably fit either or. I'm probably just going to go with a machine gun in the port there. And then section 27, you just finish off construction by placing the turret into the lockable sections there in the body. Now then, section 28 and 29 give you the colour callouts and the camo pattern for this tank. The camo pattern for this tank is exactly the same for both variants, But the one thing I need to point out is that Camo Pattern 28 is for the only version that was seen operational service in a what's called a hostile front, which the tank was sent to Kosovo as part of the KFOR units, which is the rapid response units for Allied tanks. But of course France isn't part of NATO, so they were sent to Kosovo as a goodwill gesture, not part of the NATO presence. It was more of the United Nations presence, which France tends to actually do quite a lot, and they do get involved with it. And 501 503 RCC was the first regiment that was equipped with the Leclerc tank, and that's featured in section 29 there. So section 28, which is this variant, you've got different decals there, GIAT, Sprues, and section 29 features the first variant, which was offered in service, and I think they're based in Paris. So that's the instructions. They're quite easy to follow. There's not a huge amount of issues that I can foresee there. The decals, like all Revell decals, I'm expecting them to be really good, but there won't be an awful lot of them, and I'm hoping I can show you the decals on this kit. I'll try and bring them a little bit closer to you so you can see. The decals might be small, but the register on them is really, really nice. And I was as impressed with these as I was with the T98's decals, and the decals went on that tank really, really nicely. There are a few more number plates, but there's a French flag there. I think that's a green dot which covers an electronic device, and there's some other markings there which fit onto the Leclerc T5 tank, and they look really nice. There's very little backing film, and the decals register is really, really good. Very impressed with those. So that's the decals, no issues there. I'll just put these to one side because I want to show you the sprues. And the sprues, I'm not going to go too much in depth with the sprues, but I am going to talk about one particular part on these sprues. Well, two or three actually. The sprues themselves are really good quality. There's no flash. There's no issues. The plastic is really, really good quality, as I would normally expect with Revell modern issue tanks. But that chassis there that mounts all the road wheels and the drive sprocket and whatnot, it sort of has a look about it of sort of 70s Hasegawa mini box kits. It looks a bit waxy, doesn't it? The actual detail doesn't look crisp and fantastic. I'm trying to show you what I mean by that. But don't be put off by this, because most of that's going to be hidden anyway by road wheels and panniers. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But I do want to state that the parts on these sprues are really nicely moulded. The craft work on them is fantastic. I mean, look at that little grate there at the back, the pannier grate. The exhaust pipes look really nice. The exhaust pipes will actually end up being hollow, as you can see there, which is nice, so that you can you won't have to worry about drilling them out. So that's that sprue. This is the part sprue that has all the tracks on. The individual links there, they're the parts that go around the idler and return drive sprocket and whatnot, and they're the long stretches. The tracks don't look as detailed as the ones that were on the T98, and I also built the Leopard Mark II from Revell, and I thought the parts and the tracks on those kits were of better detail. But don't be put off, because the tracks on the Leclerc tank are actually like that. They are really accurate. Very, very impressed with those. And if you look at photographs of the Leclerc tank, it actually has rubber pads for driving on roads. But when you take the rubber pads off the tracks and you go off country tracks, they're like that. They're just exactly the same as those. Right, these are all the wheels. Again, I was looking at the wheels on this tank and I was thinking, they don't look particularly detailed, do they? There's not an awful lot of features going on there, and you can see it's nicely focusing up there. You can see what I mean. But the Leclerc's tank wheels are exactly like that. So, you know, Yeah, interesting. This is the top of the turret, and again you'll probably say, well, that doesn't look terribly detailed, does it? But the Leclerc tank's turret, the features, surface features and detail on the turret is exactly like that. The only thing that I can see on the photographs has actually been nicely crafted by Revell, and that's those, I think they're sensors or vents, or there's something in the side of the turret there, and they're nicely crafted and recreated. So again, Revell, well done. And this is the fourth sprue that I wanted to show you. There's the two halves there to the gun, but the gun itself, well, the end of the gun will actually be open. You know, it won't be a solid piece, so maybe that's why they've done it in two halves. The parts, I can't praise the parts enough. They're beautifully moulded. Look at those little hooks that go into the front of the tank there. They're really nicely crafted. They're absolutely flash free. The machine gun, which you can see there, is beautifully moulded. Really nice parts. I'm really impressed with the quality of the moulding on this kit. And then I got to the top of the body shell of the tank, and I looked at it and I thought, God, that looks really bland. It's, I mean, there are a couple of vents there, which you can see. I'm hoping the camera's going to be able to pick them up. There are a couple of vents there, but they don't look fantastically deeply detailed, do they? Yeah, you can see them now. But if you look at pictures of the real Leclerc tank, that's exactly how they are. So I think Revell have got it spot on, even though the detail of the tank doesn't look as well detailed as some of the other model kits that they build. So that's the parts. What I want to do now is I just want to, I'll leave you with the image of the box, actually. I just want to quickly go through the information on the kit so I can close this video down. Right. The model itself is a Revell GIAT T5 Leclerc MBT. The company that builds the tank now is actually called Novax, but GIAT was the company that was given the contract to build the 1,500 or so tanks that were actually built for the French army and for export. And I think that was actually increased by UAE, but I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was in excess of 1,550 odd tanks. The model serial number is 03131, and the tank is moulded in 1/72nd scale. There are versions covered by the Decals sheet for two versions. The first is for Task Force Leclerc KFOR, based at Nahe, Kosovska, Mitrovica in northern Kosovo during June 1999. And the second is the 501st and 503rd RCC units. These were the first units to be equipped with the T1 Leclerc, now using the T5 and T6 models. The dimensions of the kit are approximately 5¼ inches long, 2 inches wide and 1½ inches high to the top of the turret. There are 136 parts on 4 green plastic sprues, and I just want to quickly go through the options and costs because they're interesting. In 72nd scale, obviously you have the Revell T5 Leclerc tank, and this kit generally retails for between 8 and 20 quid. It's usually around about £20 in the shops. I have seen it for about £14.99 in some shops, but it's usually £19.99. But it's also released under the Boxing of Ace Corporation as a T5 Leclerc, and I have seen those on eBay and Amazon going for as little as 10 to 12 quid. The Mars T5 Leclerc tank is about £10ish. Haven't seen any at the moment, but I have seen other tanks from their ranges boxed in Mars boxings, and they go for about 10 quid. But the T5 Leclerc was slated by virtually every single reviewer online, and the IPMS even slated it because they said it was so terrible. And I've actually seen a picture of the Mars tank built up, and I'm not joking you, it really does look like one of the poly toys that Airfix used to release in the 60s and 70s. It's terrible. In 1/48 scale, Academy release for T5 Leclerc, and that retails for between £9 and £40. It's generally about $34.99 in the shops if you can get a stockist that stocks the 48 scale range. The thing to remember about the Academy kit is that it's motorised. In 1/35 scale, the Hella original release, which I think is a T1, but don't quote me, it might be a T5, is retails for about 15 to 20 quid, and the T5/T6 newer release retails for between 15 and 30 quid. The Tamiya model of the T5 Leclerc is between 25 and 45 quid, depending on the condition of the box and how greedy the person is who's trying to sell it. And the Trumpeter T5 Leclerc usually retails for about £12 to £15, but I have seen it as cheap as £7.50 on eBay. Conclusions. Well, like all Revell 1/72 scale modern armour kits, it is really good and for detail and accuracy, but some of the parts do look a little bit old school Hasegawa from the 70s, but the detail isn't as abundant as say the T90 or the Leopard 2. I did recently build the Leopard 2 tank, and the T5 Leclerc does seem a little bit bereft of surface detail as well, but it is probably correct, as some of the pictures that I've got of the T5 Leclerc does justify the lackluster detail on the body shell. The reviews online show that there are no build fit issues, and they do seem to be happy with their end results. So all in all, I would say it's a pretty good kit. I would certainly recommend this kit over the Mars release. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this kit over the Mars release. The Academy, Tamiya and Trumpeter kits will always produce a good quality model nowadays, especially Trumpeter and Tamiya. Their offerings are usually very, very good. But being French, I would have thought the Hella kit would probably be pretty good too. So all in all, I would give this kit a thumbs up for Revell, and I'm sure it would make a nice addition to anyone's armour collection. It's a very colourful camo pattern in two-tone green and light brown, and some of them, I have seen photographs of some of them where they're light green, light tan and matte black, but most of them are two-tone green and light brown. So yeah, I would recommend this kit. It does look like a nice build. It looks like it'll probably build up. I wouldn't say it would build up quickly, but it's probably like the T90A that I produced recently. It'd probably take a couple of months to build, and I would thought it would go together quite nicely. Although there might be an issue coming up around the horizon with the gun that's in two halves. So all in all, that's the inbox review finished. I hope this review's been of some good, and thanks very much for watching, and thank you all my subscribers. If there are any questions, please list them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So as I said before, I hope you like this video. If you like what you like, give me a like, it's very appreciated. Give me some comments, and if you haven't subscribed, check my other videos out and subscribe. I really do appreciate all the support I've been getting, and yeah, it's a wonderful community on YouTube. So best of luck with all your modelling projects. I hope everything goes smooth and sweet. Thanks for now. Bye bye.